All right, let's dive into something that's really changing the game for modern sales teams, the sales pod model. We're going to break down how this whole team-based approach can fire up your growth, and honestly, why that old-school lone wolf sales playbook just doesn't fly anymore.
But first, let's just cut to the chase with a question for anyone out there leading a sales team. Is your current structure actually killing your growth? I mean, if you're seeing frustrating communication gaps, performance that's all over the place, or this massive disconnect between closing a deal and actually keeping a customer happy, well, the answer might be a big yes.
So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off by looking at the old sales playbook. Then we'll get into this idea of selling as a team sport. After that, we're going to really dissect a sales pod, weigh the good and the bad, and then finally help you figure out if this whole thing is actually the right move for your team. Okay, so let's start with what most of us are used to, that traditional, siloed way of doing sales. For decades, this was just how it was done, no questions asked. But in today's market, man, the cracks are really starting to show.
Think about it. You've got the classic setup. One sales director trying to manage like a dozen reps, and every single rep is basically their own little island, just worrying about their own quota. This creates these massive silos, right? The person who finds the lead has no real connection to the person who closes the deal, who then is totally disconnected from the person trying to make the customer successful. It's just inefficient. And frankly, it makes for a pretty jarring experience for the customer.
So all those problems, they're forcing us into a totally new way of thinking. The sales process today is it's too complicated for one person to own from start to finish. It demands a whole new philosophy. And that really brings us to the core idea behind all of this. Selling is no longer a game for individual superstars. It's a team sport. Real success now depends on these seamless handoffs, on shared knowledge between prospecting, closing, and making sure the customer sticks around. The entire team, the whole unit, wins or loses together. So what's the actual structure that makes this team-based approach happen? Well, that's the sales pod. So what is it? A pod is basically a small, self-contained unit. It brings together all those different roles, your sales development reps, your account executives, your customer success managers, into one tight-knit team, all laser-focused on the same accounts or the same slice of the market.
All right, now for the fun part. Let's pop the hood on a sales pod and really see how this engine works, not just in terms of who's on the team, but also the hard numbers and the financial logic that actually makes it a smart business decision.
So a typical POD has a few key players. You've got your SDR, who's out there finding and qualifying leads. Then there's the account executive, the AE, who's the closer. And then, super important, you have the customer success manager, or CSM, who comes in after the deal is signed to make sure the customer is happy and successful. Now, depending on what you're selling, you might also have a sales engineer for the super technical stuff, or a marketing liaison to keep everything aligned.
Now, a really common and effective way to get started, think of it as the classic recipe, is this. You have one SDR who is generating enough leads to keep 2 account executives busy, and then all the customers they bring in are supported by one CSM. That ratio creates a really nice balanced flow of work. Okay, let's talk money. When you put a POD like that together, you're looking at a personnel cost of roughly $300,000 a year. And what this does is pretty cool. It turns the team into its own little business unit with its own profit and loss statement. So if that POD costs you $300,000 a year, what does it need to bring in to be viable? Well, the target is right around $750,000 in annual recurring revenue. And that number isn't just pulled out of thin air. It's based on a really important financial rule for scaling sales teams the right way. And here it is. This is the golden rule. The total cost of that POD, that $300,000 in salaries, should never be more than 40% of the revenue it generates. That 40% cost of revenue number is your North Star. It's the key to making sure your growth is actually profitable and something you can scale without breaking the bank.
Of course, that classic recipe isn't a one-size-fits-all deal. Not at all. You can and you absolutely should tweak these ratios based on your strategy. If your business is drowning in inbound leads, yeah, one SDR can probably feed 2 AEs, no problem. But if you're trying to crack a brand new, super tough market, you might need 2 hardcore outbound SDRs just to create enough pipeline for a single AE.
So the POD model is definitely powerful, but let's be real. It's not a magic wand you could just wave over your sales org. It's really important to get a clear-eyed, balanced look at both the huge upsides and some of the very real challenges that you'll face trying to put this into practice. So on the plus side, the benefits are awesome. You get incredible collaboration. Communication gets way easier. Accountability goes through the roof because the team wins or loses as a single unit. And it's super scalable. Need more revenue? You just add another pod. But the challenges are legit too. It can be more complex to manage. You have to be smart about allocating resources. And hey, if you're not careful, the pods themselves can turn into a new kind of silo.
Which brings us to the final, and maybe the most important question of all. Is the sales POD model actually the right fit for your business right here, right now? So let's run through a quick little litmus test. This model really shines in a few specific situations. If you have a high-volume, high-velocity sales motion, lots of deals moving fast, it's a fantastic fit. It's also perfect when closing a deal needs that tight teamwork between sales and customer success. And it's especially good when keeping customers is critical, which, let's be honest, in the world of SaaS, it always is.
The model also has to change depending on who you're selling to. If you're targeting small and medium businesses, you'll probably use smaller PODs focused on transactional speed, and you scale by just stamping out more of them. But for big enterprise sales, your PODs are going to be more complex, probably with a dedicated sales engineer, and they'll be focused on building those deep long-term relationships. In that world, scaling is more about deepening expertise, not just adding more people.
And one last thing, you have to remember that launching PODs isn't some quick fix. It takes real organizational maturity. You absolutely have to have clear processes, strong leaders for each POD, a culture that actually uses data to make decisions, and a serious commitment to training people all the time. Without that solid foundation, the whole model can fall apart pretty quickly. So, if we boil this all down, what's the one thing you should walk away with? The sales POD model is so much more than a new org chart. It's a fundamental shift in philosophy. It's about moving away from trying to hire a bunch of lone wolf star salespeople and instead focusing on building integrated, high-performing teams where the system itself is the real star.
And that leaves us with one final thought for you to take back to your own organization. I'm sure your people are working hard, but are they really, truly working together? The answer to that question might just determine the future of your company's growth. Thanks for tuning in.